CM 365, all about Carnatic music.
We had earlier talked about the Kriti format as we see today, having the segments of Pallavi, Anupallavi and Charanam. We also went back in history to see how in the Tevaram and Tiruppugai and other such compositions, we just have a single melody which gets repeated through the entire work in terms of the stanzas, all of them getting repeated in the same melody. Between these two kinds of formats, we have 2-3 important composers who have contributed, I would say, towards the process of the evolution of the Kriti itself. First, I would like to make a mention of Sri Jayadevar, who composed the Gita Govinda. We call his compositions as Ashtapadis, and we see that he lived in the 12th century, so this work was actually done in the 12th century. And Ashtapadi means that which contains 8 couplets. Each of the hymns actually contains 8 couplets, that's why it's called Ashtapadi. Of course, these are not singular compositions like the Tevaram or Tiruppugai. Here we should understand that this is a whole body of work. The Gita Govindam is actually a whole body of work containing a complete storyline in it. And all these songs that we talk about as Ashtapadis are only a part of this big or the larger work. Now today, whether in the Ashtapadi that is sung in the bhajanas, we see that they may sing one particular Ashtapadi, or if it is a day-long bhajana, sometimes they may sing all the Ashtapadis. But in the bhajana tradition, at least what we see that what we call as Ashta or the 8 padis or the 8 kind of stanzas or couplets are generally sung completely in the bhajana tradition. But when the same Ashtapadi has come to become a part of our art music, that is Kacheri music, we don't sing all the stanzas. We actually put it into the mold of a Kriti, like a Pallavi, Anupallavi, Charanam format and sing, or a Pallavi and multiple Charanam format and sing it. Now let's look at one example to see how we have actually the original format and how we have modified it to suit our present requirements. Of course, Ashtapadi is also very important as a compositional form because that is one of the earliest works where we find a reference to a composition with a particular ragam and thala mentioned. Of course, the ragams mentioned, some of them we are not even aware of the Lakshana today because it was way back in the 12th century. And also we understand from what you see in the Kacheri that the original ragas mentioned in the Ashtapadis are seldom kept intact, and we use whatever ragam we want in fact today to sing these Ashtapadis in concerts. No, but the point here again is that of the structure, because we were talking about the evolution of the compositional form, the Kriti and the Kirtana. Here we see that if you take one Ashtapadi, first we have what we call as one Charanam. After that, one singular line or 2 lines which is called as the Dhruva Padam, which is repeated after each of the Charanam. Then after that, the other Charanams follows. For example, if you take Chandana Charchita, there Hari Riha Mugdha Vidhuni Kare, that particular line is the Dhruva Padam. So it starts off with the first Charanam line. Chandana Charchita Neela Kalebara Pita Vasana Vanabali Keli Chalal Bani Kundala Mandite Gantayuga Smita Shali Hari Riha Mugdha Vadhuni Kare Vilasini Vilasati Keli Pare Hari Riha Mugdha Vadhuni Kare. So this Hari Riga Mugdha Vadhuni Kare becomes the Dhruva Padam. After that there are multiple stanzas. I sing the last, the Mudhra Charana. Sri Jayadeva Kaveritam Adbhutam Keshava Keli Rahasyam. It goes like that. So what I wanted to emphasize here is that the format here is like if you want to make it to the understanding of what we have today in terms of that, it's like one charanam followed by the Dhruva Padam and then the other charanams follow. Another example we could take of the same Ashtabadi. Lalita Lavanka Lata Parishilana Komala Malaya Sami Ire Madhukarani Kara Karampita Kokira Pujita Kunja Kutire Radhe. So that charanam gets over, then the line Viharati Haririka Sahasa Vasante Nrityati Yuvati Janena Samusaki Viragi Janasyatu Radhe Radhe Viharati Haririka Sarasa Vasante. Like that all the charanams come, and the last one Sri Jaya Deva Panditam Idamudayati Hari Charana Spriti Saram. Like this you see that the concept of this conceptualization of something like a Pallavi in between was there. After this we come to the time of Purandara Dasa, who of course has composed the Dasa Padagalu, which we call the whole team of Dasas, especially with reference to Sri Purandara Dasa, who composed a lot of these compositions. And before that we also have to make a special mention about the Talapaka composers who lived before him in the 14th century, where we see that a clear-cut kind of structure of the Pallavi followed by Charanas. That kind of a structure was evolved by the Talapaka composers. We owe a lot to them in terms of laying or making or kind of giving us the seeds of this whole concept of Pallavi and Charanam. So we see that though of course again here also the compositions of Annamacharya that we sing today may not be in the same tune that was said by Annamacharya, because we only have the lyrics in the copper plates. We do not know the original tunes of most of the compositions. But keeping this in mind, we see that we actually give a particular melody to the Pallavi followed by the 2 charanas or 3 charanas, all of them in the same kind of a melody. For example, if you take Bhavamulona Bhagya Bulandunu Govinda Govinda Hani Koluvavo Manasa. In that first Hari Avatara Mule Akhila Devatalu, or the next one Achutuditade Adiyuvatyamu. Like this you see all the stanzas have got the same kind of melody. Even in the compositions of Purandara Dasa, we see that the same concept of the Pallavi followed by multiple charanas, and all of them having similar tunes. And of course again, as I said earlier also, the compositions actually had very, very simple tune because of the fact that these were only used as a vehicle or a means or as a tool towards the path of bhakti. The compositions of Purandara Dasa today we actually ornament them a lot and put a lot of sangatis and all and sing. This is because of the fact that we have brought it into the domain of art music, and so we want to decorate it with all the musical beauties possible. But then that was not definitely the original intention of the composers like Purandara Dasa or even Annamacharya, where for them the focus was on the lyrics and the Sahitya Bhava. Now further we see that thus in the pre-Trinity time we also have other composers who have contributed towards this Kriti and Kirtana format, like Pachimiriya Madhyappaya, Pallavi Gopala Iyer, Ramaswamy Dikshidhar, Bhadrachala Ramdas, a very important composer, Margadashi Sheshaya, etc., who actually have their own compositions which actually almost give us some kind of a prototype of all these Kritis, which was later enriched and actually perfected by the Trinity. Thus we could say that here what is important is that every form, especially the Kriti especially, is a very interesting form because it has undergone several processes of evolution. We could probably compare it to the Varnam to understand it better, in the sense that in Varnam there is almost a rigid format right from its inception to what it is today. There has not been really any radical change in terms of its structure, its form, etc. Because generally in a Varnam you have a Pallavi, Anupallavi, Muktaiswaram, then the Charanam and Charanaswaras. So whether it's Adi Tala Varnam or whether it's Ada Tala Varnam or Jamba Tala Varnam or whatever the Talam in which the Varnam is composed, the format has to be kept intact. There is also a certain rigid grammar in terms of how the swarams have to be conceived in the charana, what is the progression of the swaras. So there are all somewhat, codified rules for Varna. But the Kriti as such is a very, very interesting form, I would say, because it has come through the ages in different avatars, we could say. And all these modifications which have been going on throughout from the early times to the time of the Trinity, finally we see that probably God is destined that they were the people who had to really give that concrete shape to the Kriti, crystallize the Kriti and make it a kind of a unique form in their hands through their own compositions. And so thus we see that, as I said earlier also, the Trinity in their own inimitable way, they have given us specific dimensions to the Kriti. That is how they have conceived the Kriti. And even in that you see that each one has not stuck to just one format of the Kriti. That's another beauty, where each one also has looked at the same Kriti as a form in multiple ways and multiple dimensions. And that's why we see that the Kriti after the time of the Trinity has acquired a sense of vastness in terms of dimension.
CM 365, all about Carnatic music.